Hi, it's Malcolm and I'm joined by my colleague Wayne, and we're going to talk about shared ownership mortgages. So shared ownership's been around for quite a long time, Wayne. Who would your typical type of customer be for a shared ownership purchase?
I think typically people who are obviously wanting to get onto the property ladder but maybe struggling either income-wise or deposit-wise or whatever to be able to actually buy a home outright of their own. It gives them an easy way into the market really, or a more cost-effective way into the market.
And I suppose over recent years, let's say less 10, maybe even 20 years, we've seen property prices generally kind of get out of the reach of first-time buyers.
That's right, and so by buying a share of a property, it maybe allows maybe a young family, for example, to buy the sort of house that they couldn't afford on the open market, but that gives them the accommodation that they need to house their family, if they've got young children or whatever. Whereas on the open market, for a similar price, they might be able to only afford to buy a much smaller house, that sort of thing.
And I suppose that's because over the years, we haven't built enough properties in the UK. Supply and demand has forced the prices up, but really salaries have never really risen at the same growth speed.
Again, that's right. And also, a lot of the traditional social housing, like council housing, a lot of that's been sold off, so there's not as much of that available. And the housing associations who run the shared ownership schemes largely have gone some way to sort of fill in that gap.
Yeah, we'll cover Right to Buy in a separate video, always a controversial one, but in the 1980s, a lot of people did take advantage of that and get onto the ladder. And because those properties have been bought up and the governments have not really built new council houses over the years, that's really one of the reasons, again, why the prices have kind of shot up. So in terms of a customer, first-time buyer then, I suppose this might come in for key workers. So if you've got someone working maybe for the NHS, and they're in a part of the country where property prices are high, this is a good route in for them.
This is it. If you think about somewhere like London, for example, where there's a massive need for key workers, and yet they're not on necessarily the salaries that would enable them to pay London prices on properties. This is an ideal sort of halfway house solution for a lot of people in that situation.
Okay, and then if you're interested in taking out a shared ownership mortgage, then what would you do first? Would you try and get your mortgage in place first? Would you contact a housing association first? What would be the running order for someone interested in this?
I would always say talk to an advisor first, because you need to know whether you can actually borrow anything at all. So I would always look at doing the groundwork in terms of finding out what your borrowing capacity might be. Probably run the two things alongside. Keep an eye on what the local housing associations are doing, what sort of prices they're offering, because one of the aspects is what a mortgage advisor would need to take into account is what rent you're going to be paying on the share that you don't own. So it's always trying to get a balance between making sure that it is affordable and also making sure that there's property available. But I'd always start with an advisor just to make sure that you can actually you can borrow enough to do what you'd ideally like to do.
Yeah, these type of mortgages can be more difficult to obtain if you've got bad credit as well sometimes.
Absolutely, yeah.
You would go about finding this type of property by contacting a housing association, or just looking on Rightmove and Zoopla. The shared ownership properties are advertised on there as well. So in your experience of doing shared ownership mortgages, Wayne, what typical percentage do people enter the market at? Is it 25%?
I was going to say, I would say probably more commonly 50, certainly in my personal experience. But as you say, it can be 25, it can be 50, it can be 75. I think the things to look out for that lenders are particularly looking out for is, do you have the ability at some point to become a 100% owner? Because some of the housing associations don't allow that because they want to keep this, to help other people get on the housing ladder sort of thing. So that's something that's important to watch out for. Staircasing, as it's known, that you can increase your share over a period of time.
And then I suppose it's the aspiration of people taking out shared ownership mortgages to do that staircasing, and is it to get to 100% ultimately?
I think ideally, as time progresses, they would like the idea of that is going to become their own home, wholly owned at some point. Yeah.
Okay. And if you are interested in this, typically customers had to put down a small deposit on this type of property because they're already buying a share, and it might only be 10%, 5%, or sometimes 0% on the share that they're buying. So it is a good way for people who are struggling otherwise to get onto the property ladder. So if you're looking for some advice on shared ownership mortgages, please do not hesitate to get in touch, and we'll be happy to help you. Thanks for watching. If you're in the market for mortgage advice, please drop me an email, malcolm@ukmoneyman.com, or give us a call, and please subscribe to our channel.